Hi, I'm Martina Kwan, and welcome to my Daring to Be Different podcast, where I interview high achieving women. And I'm very excited to introduce you today to my special guest, Beth Whitman. And she is a phenomenal woman, and you definitely want to hear this story. Some of the most incredible things that she's done, aside from being an author, a podcast host, she's a globe-trotting adventurer who's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. She's done countless marathons, and she did the two times the 25-day, 220-mile Snowman Trek in Bhutan. So please welcome Beth Whitman, and I'm so pleased that you're here.
Martina, thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you very much.
And I would love to hear, first of all, what makes you the type of woman that you are today? What makes someone this globe-trotting adventurer? Tell me about your childhood and what played into your mind.
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up in New Jersey. And so I often tell people, I say, well, I kind of wanted to get out of New Jersey. Like, have you ever been to New Jersey? So maybe that was a big motivator for me. And I say that half jokingly because I do love Jersey. I have a lot of family there still, best pizza in the country, in my opinion. But I do think that really wasn't the environment for me. My parents, they subscribed to National Geographic. And I know that when I was young, I would look through those magazines and, just look at all the photos, particularly of the men, the tribal men from Papua New Guinea. And they had pig's tusks in their noses and just these wild outfits on and makeup, just donning all this incredible makeup on their bodies. And I'd always wanted to see that. But I started slowly and just started traveling, kind of working my way out of New Jersey, traveling around the United States, meeting people. I would stay at youth hostels. When I was traveling around the US, I would stay at youth hostels and meet these people from Switzerland and France and Australia. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's a whole world out there. I have to go out and check it out. So, early on, what I would do is I would work 3 jobs, I would save all my money, and then I would go backpack for months. One time I took off for a year in 1992. I saved my money and I traveled, put everything in storage and traveled with a backpack for a year. But I just, it really is like an addiction to me. I just I crave it. I have to have the cultural influence and the food and the people and the language, I love immersing myself into a place when I don't know the language, because it's so wonderful to me, to kind of be in a way just out of my comfort zone, and it stretches me. And then it really just makes me a better person when I get home as well. So those travels, traveling around the United States, meeting people from around the world, and then just kind of pushing my boundaries and my comfort level. I had traveled to Asia and fell in love with Asia and just kept getting pulled back there. And then slowly just, exploring South America and Africa with Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, going on safari. But yeah, it's been really rewarding and just a fabulous life for me.
Mm-hmm. Now that's incredible. So tell me how it was traveling alone as a woman in different countries.
Well, I think that growing up in New Jersey and being so close to New York City, like, often, taking the train into New York, I think that I have a certain amount of street smarts that maybe the average woman or the average person wouldn't have. So I'm very aware of my surroundings. So I think that has been really helpful in my travels. So I have not had anything bad happen to me in my travels, but even though I do these adventurous things, I also do them a little bit on the conservative side. I am really careful. Like, I don't go out at night, and I don't, get into a taxi, especially at night. I wouldn't get into a taxi without having somebody with me. So I've just been really careful in terms of that. But I'm also, even though I have 3 brothers, they are 7, 9, and 11 years older than I am. So in a way, I spent a lot of time alone. They were out of the house, during my teenage years. So I learned to spend a lot of time alone. So I did a lot of my travel by myself. And so for me, it's really comfortable. And I, because I haven't, I am really cautious. I haven't had any bad instances happen to me. I haven't had anything, that would cause me concern for future trips.
Mhm. Mhm.
Does that answer your question?
It does. It does.
It's hard to, honestly, it's like hard to know when someone says what is it like as a woman traveler? It's just, I don't even think of it like that. I just think I'm a traveler. I'm an independent traveler. And I don't consider, like, yes, there are things that I can do because I'm a woman, and there's things that I can't do because I'm a woman. Like, I can get into the kitchen of a woman's kitchen in Vietnam. I'm welcomed in. So there are some benefits to it. But then there are just some things that I can't do, that I'm just well aware that I couldn't just go off and adventure by myself. For instance, in Papua New Guinea, I'm reading a book right now where this journalist is just in the deep heart of this country. And I just think it's so cool, but I could never do it as a woman. It would just be really unsafe for me. So I recognize that can be an issue for women, but yeah, you take advantage of the things that you can take advantage of.
Yeah. Well, traveling as a woman, I feel the same way as you. I would travel anywhere by myself, but a lot of women wouldn't. And
Mhm.
so you've started a company I found very interesting that focuses on doing trips for women. And I
Yeah.
think that's actually a great market, not
Mhm.
only for single women, but for women who are married, where their husbands would feel more comfortable with them traveling in a group of women versus a
Like a
commingled.
co-ed trip, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I wrote a book. This is, oh gosh, like 14 years ago now. Wanderlust and Lipstick: The Essential Guide for Women Traveling Solo. And my whole idea was like, well, let me share these tips of travel to encourage other women to travel. And what happened is that they came back to me and said, well, would you lead a trip? Because if you led a trip, I would go with you. And I thought, that's not what I wanted. I really wanted you to travel independently. But I had this opportunity to lead a trip to Bhutan, and I found that I really enjoyed it. And I thought, oh, I think I could make a business out of this. And so then I moved to India. I mean, the next tour that I did was in India and then Vietnam, because I had connections there. And then everything has just kind of expanded from that. But what I have found is that this is my sisterhood. These women become my friends and my sisters, the ones that I never had. So it's been an amazing experience for me just to be in the company of these really wonderful women, that I just didn't have that exposure to, growing up in my household. So it truly is a sisterhood.
That's wonderful. So tell me about some of the trips that you're planning for this year. Of course, there are constraints because of COVID. And what are you planning for next year that people can look forward to?
Well, good question. So the company is WanderTours, and I've had to make some changes, unfortunately, as we all have had to kind of shift things around. And for 2021, I'm going to focus on trips in the US. So I do some tours in the US. I do culinary trips to Seattle, Santa Fe, and New Orleans, in addition to trips around the world. And this year, rather than the culinary trips, which tend to be more like restaurant focused or cooking class focused, I'm working on outdoor adventures. So women can come hiking with me in the Cascade Mountains, just outside of Seattle, or we can go to a retreat center in Idaho, or go canoeing in Montana, biking in Eastern Washington and Idaho and Montana. That's another one I'm putting together. And then kayaking in Baja, Mexico. So these will be trips that the most of the time will be spent outdoors. We'll be around campfires. We'll be eating outside. Some are camping, some are lodge based or cabin based. So we go back to our own, our own spaces, and then we come meet outside, and we get to, and there'll be small groups too. Obviously, we won't be in big groups, but all of my tours are small groups. These will be even smaller.
That sounds wonderful. So what about next year?
So for next year, I hope to be not only like kind of back on track, but I hope to add even more tours in 2022 because, 2020, I pretty much couldn't do anything. So I've got trips to Gujarat, India planned, Morocco, Papua New Guinea, and I'm working on Ireland. And I've got kind of in the back of my mind, Peru, Machu Picchu, and the Galapagos as well. But I've got, now it's kind of like I'm looking at my list of, of places that I really enjoy and that I know other people enjoy, and just looking at my calendar and trying to figure out how to, like kind of plug in all those places for the following year.
That sounds really wonderful, and I'm sure they'll be sold out for sure.
I think so.
And yeah, I mean, like you said, there is a pent-up demand for travel and to enjoy life and be outdoors. And yeah, right now it's a little bit of a different life. What really interested me, Beth, about your background is all these accomplishments in terms of physical and mental accomplishments of doing twice the 25-day trek in Bhutan, for example, or climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, or doing, I can't even remember how many miles of marathons that you've run. So how did you get into those activities, basically?
Well, I was never a runner, and never had any interest in it. Didn't grow up, doing track and field, hated it. I was always the slowest one going around the track. And I knew with all of my travel that I needed to figure out some way to stay healthy, to stay fit while I was traveling. And not every hotel has a fitness center. So I thought, well, if I could just bring, my running clothes, if I ran, then I could go out and at least know that I could get a run in whatever city I was in. So I started running, and I hated it. I would go around my neighborhood and I would do maybe 3, maybe 5 miles. And I just thought, oh, this is so boring. I do not like this at all. And it's really interesting, Martina. It's like, you probably know this too. It's like, we tell ourselves stories about what we can and we can't do. And I had always told myself, I knew about this trek in Bhutan, but I always said, oh, I could never do anything like that. That's for someone else. And then lo and behold, I challenged myself and I said, you know what, I'm going to try this. I led a group of people twice on this, and it's up to 18,000 feet, so it's a long, and you're sleeping in a tent, and it's cold, and it's, it's beautiful, but it's challenging. And when I was on that trek, I thought, boy, I never thought I could do this. What else is there that I always told myself I couldn't do? And that was run a marathon. And I said, I'm going to go home and I'm going to run a marathon. So I did. I came and I figured it out. And the next year I ran a marathon, and I ran it on my 50th birthday, like just a couple weeks after Honolulu on my 50th birthday, just after my 50th birthday. So, so from there I thought, well, gosh, what else could I do? Then I ran 2 months later, I ran the Tokyo Marathon. And then I ran a 50 miler. And the next day I ran another marathon. So I did back-to-back marathons. And then I heard about this crazy thing called a quadzilla, which is 4 marathons in 4 days. And so then the next year I ran a quadzilla. And then I heard about, it's like, okay, what's next? And then I heard about this thing called Epic 5 in Hawaii, because who doesn't want to go to Hawaii, right? That's 5 50K, which is 31 miles, in 5 days on 5 Hawaiian islands. So it's running in the morning, getting on a plane, going to the next island, sleeping, getting up the next day, running, et cetera, et cetera. So for 5. I'm now the race director of that event. So later this year, October, I'll be back to offer that as an event. But that's how it started. It all started with me kind of challenging myself of, well, you always said you couldn't run a marathon. You're going to go run a marathon. You're just going to figure it out. And now I love it. I love it. So, yeah, I think that's how it works. So in 2020, I was supposed to run a series called The Four Deserts, and it's 250K across 4 different deserts. So it's 155 miles. You run 155 miles across the Namib in Namibia, the Gobi in Mongolia, the Atacama in Chile, and Antarctica. And of course, they had to move all of their events to 2021. So my first one will be in April. Hopefully, it'll be Namibia in April. It's 7 days. You're sleeping in a tent. You're basically running about a marathon a day, and you're carrying a 20-pound pack with all your food for the week, all your food and clothes and toiletries and everything for the week. Just a little event this year.
Okay, so tell me what fun is there in being in a cold tent, and what makes you want to go on the next day? What is it that makes you want to go on, and how do you pull the strength out?
Well, it's the challenge of it, right? So you do a lot of training to get to that point, to get to the mental challenge of it. And yes, there is the physicality of it, but so much of it, it's not too different than the Snowman Trek, where you have to get up every morning at 6 o'clock, have your breakfast, pack your things, and then you're going to walk for 8 hours at altitude. And then you get to camp, you have your dinner, and then you sleep, and then you do the same thing. So it's there in a way, there's a little bit of monotony to it, but it's beautiful landscape, of course. But it's the training your mind to get up and know that you have to do that day after day after day. And I think it's going to be very similar on these races, except it's only 7 days. It's only 7 days, right? It's not 25 days. So I think I have some good training already in terms of that, like just that mental capacity. And I get up every day and I run, it's like, it's just being self-motivated. And, as a business owner yourself and as a race car driver yourself, there's you can make a lot of excuses. There are a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do something or you don't want to do something, but you do it anyway. And it's playing mental games to ensure that you get up and you do that thing that you wrote down as a goal that you're going to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot. Most of it is mental. It's all mental, really. It's all in the mind. It's all in perseverance in the mind. And realizing what the ultimate goal is, right? Having bigger goals and breaking them down into smaller goals. So,
yeah, I've heard that. I've heard it often say, like, it's like, so it's 90%, it's 10%, it's 10% like physical and 90% mental or something like that, or what 50-50, or just how important the mental is. And just especially with COVID and the lockdown, I have realized really how important the mental aspect is, because there's a lot of people out there who are struggling, right? Or there's a lot of people who maybe aren't struggling, but they're just falling back on bad habits. And it's just, if you can just get yourself into that mental space to get yourself up and to lace up and go for a run or go for a walk or go for a bike ride, do something that is physical or just something that you don't want to do, that is the key. And then when you start stacking that up day after day after day, just the little things, you realize just 10 months just went by. And who am I today? What habits did I create over the past 10 months that makes me who I am today? Because I could have been not doing anything, but I made a choice to stack up a bunch of good habits. There's a couple of bad habits in there too. There's a little bit more chocolate than normal, but there are, there's a lot of good habits in there that got built up. So then I look at the coming year and I think, okay, I learned from the past 10 months, what can I do in the next 10 months, the next 12 months
Mhm.
to be a better person at the end of this, to be better than I was last February, when I was going, what's going on here?
That's right. So where do you live now?
In Seattle.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. So tell us about what you think makes somebody successful. What
Ooh.
are the important traits?
Oh gosh. Um, Boy, I just off the top of my head, some things that just like kind of come to mind is there's got to be some level of discipline.
Hmm.
There's no doubt about that. I get up every morning and I have kind of a routine of things that I do. And one of them is to sit down and journal, just to get thoughts out of my head, and then to sit down and write a task list for the
Hmm.
day. And that kind of sets my day up. And that tells me, I even write down like, this takes me 5 minutes. This is going to take me an hour. And so then I know I heard this great term recently. It was called time confetti. And it's like, if you've got all these little bits of time, how can you make the best use of it? Probably not on Facebook. But
Hmm.
if you have a task that's going to take you 5 minutes, then you can get it off the list and just take care of it. Or you can read a book. You can do something that's going to further you in your day, your career, your life, whatever it is. So I think being uh, disciplined is really important, and I think being creative and look, I don't consider myself like a creative person. I'm not drawing art or anything, but I think you have to be open enough to look at possibilities, and I think that takes a level of creativity and open-mindedness. Just like what so how can I, the great term of 2020, pivot, how can I pivot my business, my life, to
Hmm.
fit in with all these restrictions, and what can I do to keep afloat, to keep mentally and physically afloat. What else? I don't know. I think there's a lot of things, but those are the two things that really come to mind. Like, well, I guess maybe more than two, but it's like, yeah, being disciplined, being creative, being open-minded. Really, I think those things are really important, and just doing due diligence. Just educating yourself about whatever it is, whatever you consider success, whether it's finishing a marathon or starting a business. Like, who has gone before you? Who are your mentors, either real life mentors or authors that you can look to? Because chances are you're not going to be the first person who's done this thing. So who can you get inspiration from?
Hmm. Well, and in terms of being a woman, the reason I think it's important for us to be role models is because in what we've done, there aren't that many women who have done what we've done, right? So it's important then to inspire the new generation and to show them that it can be done. Anything's possible at any
Yeah.
age. Just
Right.
like you were 50 years old when you started running marathons.
Right.
And that's, that encourages other women to say, you know what? Yes, I can.
Hmm.
And in terms of right now, yes, discipline is so important. It's important to stay focused and disciplined and not waste time with all the distractions, of which there are so many,
Right,
right?
absolutely. Hmm. Yeah.
So,
And
no.
I just have to say, like, you are such an inspiration. Because I look at you and I go, like, oh my God, this woman's, racing cars. That seems crazy to me. That just seems like it's so outside of my knowledge base
Mhm.
that like I have so much admiration for that, because I know so little about it, that it's this great mystery. Maybe I've been threatening, I'm going to come down there and I'm going to take your driving course, just to prove to myself that it's something that I could do. But yeah, I mean, I like looking to women like you as well. Like, I wouldn't even know where to start. How to race drive.
Well, and likewise, that's why I wanted to interview you, because you've done all these things that, in terms of the marathons and 7-day this and 5-day this, I wouldn't know where to begin. So
Yeah, yeah.
thank you so much for being here. How would people get in touch with you, Beth?
Yep. So best way would be to take a look at, I've got a couple of websites, Wander Tours, and that's WANDER tours.com. Wanderlust and Lipstick also, and that's got a lot of travel tips for women. And then probably Facebook is the best. It's where I'm most active on social media. So Beth Whitman on Facebook.
Okay, wonderful. And if you want to listen to her podcast, it's the She's Bold podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. She's Bold podcast. I'm on a little bit of a hiatus right now, just until I can start having conversations with women in person again, because that's how I built the podcast, on these one-on-one conversations. So on a little bit of a hiatus, but there's, I don't know, 150, or there's a lot of episodes there. There's a lot of back catalog there. So thanks for mentioning that as well. And I'm on Instagram too. I'm Wandergal on Instagram, and Beth Whitwa, BETHWHITWA on Instagram too. And I do a lot of travel photos and running photos on there.
And by the way, Wanderlust was one of my favorite terms while I was growing up in all these different countries and moving around. And it's this thing that's inside of you where you have to travel. You
Right.
have to go out and explore. And
Mhm.
so in English, wanderlust.
Right.
It's such a great word. So
it is a great word. Mm-hmm.
Again, thank you so much for being here. I truly enjoyed our time together.
Well,
And
thanks, Martina. It was really fun to talk about my story and share it, and hopefully inspire some women and men.
okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.